When it comes to categorizing economies, experts usually use a simple three-category approach, which basically divides up all the nations in either developed, developing, or underdeveloped nations. While the first and the last segments make sense, there is one big elephant in the room, which is the developing category. Simply put, this segment is too broad, which further complicates the categorizing. For example, Nigeria and Saudi Arabia both belong in this category. However, nominal GDP per capita for average Saudi citizen is more than 25 times higher compared to Nigeria. So it just simply makes no sense to group these two together in the same category, as in one country is becoming a major hub for Middle East trade and oil industries, while other is struggling with rampant inflation and high poverty. Another example is Pakistan and Romania. Pakistan has average monthly salary of around $300, while Romanian citizens earn around $2,000 on average. So I have decided to make 7 categories which can more accurately describe the economy of each country. The countries will be rated based on GDP per capita. I will also talk about the average life of citizens in such countries and challenges that the country will have to overcome to advance to the next level. Level 1: Survival Economy. Survival economies are the lowest form of countries when it comes to economic development. Most of the population of such countries usually struggle when it comes to basic foundation and requirements. Food, shelter and healthcare remain a challenge. The issue is not that these countries lack natural resources or human capital, but more often than not these countries have trouble utilizing their resources and leveraging their position. If we go by GDP per capita statistics, there are at least 25 such countries in the world. Their economy and systems are almost non-existent. Safe banking, investment opportunities and property rights are something that simply don't exist. Most people eat what they produce. Jobs are often part of the shadow economy and most people are simply working with hands on their land just to grow their own food. A good example of this level could be Burundi. The country has 14 million people and more than 95% of the workforce is employed in shadow economy, as in they are either self-employed and off the books or work for someone and don't report their income to the government. The economy is agriculture-led and even the dominant industry don't have enough investment capital to guarantee high productivity. Average life of Burundi's citizens can be brutal. The average worker is most likely suffering from malnutrition. They also work in agriculture sector and their transportation methods are either walking or bicycles. Cars are just reserved for the top 1% of the country. This type of countries usually need strong centralization and investments to get to the next level. For example, Burundi is agriculture-led economy. However, they have little to no equipment to boost their productivity. Their lands suffer from lack of reliable irrigation and weather. Level 2: World's Workshop. World's workshop economies represent the first major leap towards global integration. In these countries, the focus shifts from growing to yourself to making for others. While poverty remains widespread, the economy begins to develop a formal structure. You see the emergence of a domestic banking system, a growing urban working class, and major waves of foreign investments. The primary goal of these nations is to leverage their most abundant resource, which is affordable labor. Unlike Level 1, where the population is scattered in rural villages, Level 2 economies experience rapid urbanization. Cities expand as young people leave family farms to work in factories or processing plants. The shadow economy still exists, but it begins to shrink as large-scale manufacturing requires formal payrolls and government-issued IDs. In terms of infrastructure, electricity becomes more reliable in cities, but other areas might still struggle. Mobile phone penetration is high and digital payments are gaining foothold in the market. A clear example of a Level 2 economy is Uzbekistan. With a population of about 37 million people, it has transitioned from a strictly state-controlled agricultural model towards a more open, assembly-lined economy. While cotton was historically the main export, the country is now focusing on automotive assembly, textiles and chemical production. The average citizen is no longer just surviving, they are starting to consume. While cars are still a luxury, they are much more common than Level 1. The primary modes of transport shifts from bicycles to scooters and used sedans. In terms of education, literacy is usually high, but there is a skills gap where the education system hasn't yet caught up with the technical needs of modern industries. To move to the next level, Level 2 countries must solve the productivity issues. In Level 2, productivity is often held back by old machinery, frequent power outages, or bureaucratic red tapes. To reach next level, a country needs constant cheap power for heavy machinery, better highway and railway networks, and legal stability for investors. These countries are essentially in a race against time. They must industrialize fast enough to raise wages before their low-cost labor advantage disappears. Level 3. Construction site. Construction site economies are in the heavy lifting phase of national development. At this stage, a country has moved past basic manual assembly and is focused on building the permanent physical and digital structures required for a modern state. This is the era of the mega projects, hydroelectric dams, important railway networks, nationwide highway networks, and modernized deep sea ports are the important foundations to advance to the next level. Wealth is created by efficiently utilizing the human labor. At level 3, the government and private sector stop focusing on short-term survival and begin making third-tier investments. The economy begins to diversify. While agriculture and basic factories still exist, they are being mechanized. One farmer with a tractor now does the work that 50 people did in level 1. This extra labor flows into the service sector. There are three defining characteristics that start to appear at level 3 economies. First, banking becomes a part of daily life. Mortgages, car loans, and business credits become accessible to the emerging middle class. Moreover, a stable power grid is a defining characteristic of level 3 economy. And last but not least is property rights. This is a stage where clear land titles and legal protection becomes critical. Investors are willing to build permanent malls, hotels, and office towers because they trust the foundations of the legal system. Average citizen here has a chance to buy their own house and have their own transportation, although majority of them still find public transportation to be cheaper and more sensible option. A good example of level 3 economy is Indonesia. The country is currently building a vast network of highways and airports. They are investing heavily in infrastructure to guarantee their strong foundation for the economic progress. The country has built more roads in last 10 years compared to 40 years before that. While the extra infrastructure development can be attractive, it is worth mentioning that countries at this level often overbuild their infrastructure. Such countries may often overestimate demand on the infrastructure and spend money inefficiently. Moreover, a lot of times, a lot of their GDP growth comes from the government contracts, and it might be easier for government to justify overspending more money. For a country to successfully advance to the next level, they must leverage their position and attract foreign investments. Level 4. Consumption and service economy. At this level, economy shifts from being heavy on manual labor to now slowly becoming service-based economy. While there are still a lot of important infrastructure developments remaining at level 4, the basics are pretty much done, as in the electric grid is reliable, the roads are okay, and the internet is available to almost everyone. Level 4 economies rely a lot on consumption and services for their economy. This level of nations are usually attractive to medium and large foreign investors, simply because the population is highly educated while at the same time having lower wage expectations. In this type of countries, there are two-speed economies. Capital city and financial centers usually have a lot higher standards of living, while villages can be lagging behind. A well-educated person living in the capital city while working in high-demand sector can have quite comfortable life compared to most of the world. At this level, a lot of people can emigrate to higher social status. A nice car and decent house is not as unaffordable as it was in other levels. At this point, there are a lot of people who can even buy brand new EconoBox cars. A good example of level 4 economy is Montenegro. Montenegro is a small country in Europe with a modest GDP per capita of around $12,000. The average wage in this country is around 1,200 euros per month. Service sector, including tourism, makes up the majority of the country's GDP, while construction and agriculture being smaller yet significant part of the country's economy. In terms of cars, citizens can afford 5 to 10-year-old entry-level luxury vehicles or settle for brand new economy class cars, such as Dacia or Skoda. Level 4 economies will need increased foreign relations and stability to advance to next level. For example, joining the European Union can be one of the ways Montenegro can reach higher levels. However, the country will have to be very careful in terms of what path it will choose. Level 5 – Advanced Manufacturing. Level 5 economies represent advanced economies. At this stage, the country is close to becoming a developed nation. Level 5 economies can have active influence in the business world. Formal education is important, however, even blue-collar workers can start to have quite comfortable lives. Level 5 countries don't just assemble parts for richer countries, they often engineer their own assembly lines, product launches and marketing objectives. More often than not, such countries have enough domestic potential to execute challenging contracts, such as building roads, power plants and other parts of critical infrastructure. Moreover, these nations more often than not produce complex products such as airplanes, cars, smartphones and other products. Level 5 countries are usually seen as rich nations that are just a little bit behind to their richer peers. A good example of this is Poland. Average salary in Poland is around $2,300. Even if the rent is high in most places, most people can still live pretty comfortable lives as long as they have chosen a decent career path. Buying a brand new vehicle is not out of ordinary anymore. A lot of workers usually settle for either few-year-old used vehicles or brand new economy vehicles such as Skodas, Toyotas and others. Advancing to level 6 is mostly about stability and continuous development. Level 5 countries have everything required for advancing. They just need to keep the stable economy and foreign relations in check. Level 6 – Tech Elites. Tech-elite economies often represent economies that have fully utilized their basic resources and now they are trying to digitalize and invent everything. At this stage, economy becomes more about human productivity and how to save time, rather than how to build bridges or how to build a dam. Citizens of this level can be considered among top 1% in the world. The economy is almost fully digitalized. The friction of currency trading, foreign capital inflows and connection between employers and potential employees is almost fully gone. People can easily learn about what path to take and what career to choose. At this point, people's life becomes quite predictable. A young person can be sure that if he chooses a certain industry, then he will be compensated quite well. A good example of this level can be Japan. Japan is one of the richest nations on earth and their citizens earn around $30,000 per year. Higher education is not only the norm, but the requirements too. Countries at this stage usually invest heavily in education. Kids from a young age are basically forced to either study hard or settle less for life. Japanese citizens can afford brand new domestic cars. However, at this level, a lot of people may settle for some iconic luxury vehicles. Honestly, there isn't much a country can do to advance to the next level. A lot of countries may max out at level 6, not because of their inefficiencies, but because of their natural resources, geographic location and human capital. For example, it might be almost impossible for Japan to advance to the next level because of the demographic crisis that they are in. Level 7 – Capital Heaven. There are not many countries at this level, simply because it might be impossible for a capitalistic system to make everyone rich. If level 6 was the brain of the world, level 7 is the octopus. This is the Capital Heaven. Countries at this level are usually the industry leaders. They often have unlimited leverage when it comes to the global economy. At this level, the economy is not driven by labor, it's driven by capital gains, intellectual property rights, and global finance. These nations can be the landlords of the rest of the world. They may own patents of medicine made by level 5 country. They own banks that lend to level 4 and they own brands that manufacture their products in level 2 countries. Citizens might be extremely disconnected from other levels. Even the average person from these countries can be among top 1% of earners worldwide. A good example of such economy is Switzerland. Switzerland might be small in size, However, it has positioned itself to be the bank of the world. Not only do countries trust Switzerland when it comes to banking, but they often borrow money just to build their infrastructure. Switzerland has factories, but their factories are often focused on perfection rather than what company can make the cheapest toy. Luxury watches, life-saving medicine and high-end machinery are one of the few manufacturing industries that Switzerland has. At this stage, the average citizen can become the global citizen. Luxury cars are not the norm, but it is not something out of ordinary either. The capital is often gate-kept from foreign competitors. However, domestic companies often own huge pies in the global economy. Hey, thank you for watching my video. If you have liked the video, please subscribe so you will not miss out on our future uploads.